Hey guys, I still get a lot of questions about why I'm in Chicago and if I'm leaving and when I'm leaving and all that kind of stuff. And I thought I would go back a bit and because I really haven't given any clear information. I've given some vague answers to questions, and I just want to make it clear. But to do that, I have to go back a little bit in time and give you a little history. And yeah, so here we go. Look at this poor guy. He's sort of running back and forth in front of my van. And he doesn't look very good. Looks pretty shabby. But I think that, or I hope that it's just him losing his winter coat. It's like, you want to help them. I want to go in my cooler and find some sort of protein to give him, but I know that's not the right thing to do, so. So I've worked for the same company for a long time, nearly 2 decades, and one day about 3 years ago I got hurt pretty badly at work, no fault of my own. I went and got MRIs and x-rays done, and they said that my spine was injured in 3 spots, one of them pretty badly in the lowest part of my spine, and it was causing a ton of pain and lots of nerve problems, and that was actually the worst. At least for the first couple of years, it was all nerve issues, sciatic, obviously, but also just it was making like almost every part of my body fall asleep or tingle or pins and needles, all of them at different times. So I went through every conventional therapy there was, and some of them worked, but it was all temporary relief. So the surgeon finally recommended surgery, and he had recommended a pretty invasive surgery. So the workers' comp insurance did not like the sound of that, so they sent me for an independent medical exam. A different surgeon, and he recommended surgery also, but he recommended a laser surgery. So I don't know if you guys dealt much with insurance companies, but they are, a nightmare to deal with. Everything takes forever. You get nowhere fast. And workers' comp insurance companies are even worse. Everything takes even longer. So a lot of time went by, and I would be on work, and then I would have a flare-up, or the pain would just become too much, and then I would be off of work, and I would rest and have my therapies, and then I would be able to go back to work again. But this would go on, well, this went on and on many times over several months. And finally, my doctor just wrote me off of work completely until further notice, meaning until surgery. But the insurance company would not approve any sort of surgery. And so I went and sat at home and lay on my couch pretty much for a long time passed. And they still didn't want to do anything about it. And I was in pain, and I was getting really, isolated, and I wouldn't leave my house much, and I was getting depressed and lots of anxiety, and so I decided to take action, and I have to figure out what's next for me. And I realized my employer, the insurance company, my lawyer, they weren't really going to be much help. So I needed to figure out what I could do. I needed to find a lifestyle that was a lot less expensive, and one that didn't require me to work 50 plus hours a week. So I have long been interested in minimalism and simple living and things like that, and the tiny house thing always intrigued me. So I started doing more research about that, and then I found out that the price of those things, they cost as much as a regular house does, pretty much. So I searched for property in a rural location, and you know, like with a cabin or a small farmhouse on it, and I was going to raise my own food. I've always had a green thumb. I've always loved animals and wanted to have goats and chickens. And yeah, I looked into property down in like the Ozarks, and you can get a lot of property with a house for next to nothing down there. Thing is that you're very isolated, and part of me, that appeals to part of me, but then I was realizing that I spent a lot of time alone when I was off of work, lying on my couch, and it wasn't good for me. And I think that I'm much better with people. I don't want to be around people all the time, but when I'm around no one, when I'm totally isolated, it's just not good. So I found Bob Wells and started watching his videos, and up until then I never realized that people chose to live in vehicles. I always assumed that it was out of sheer necessity, and but yeah, people live in RVs and vans, and they do it on purpose, and they're enjoying their lives, and yeah, and there was a community out there, and you didn't have to be alone if you didn't want to be. Communities out there, nomads, and I decided that was for me. So I took action, and I went and I bought a van, and before I knew it, I hit the road and headed west. And very early on, when I reached Oregon, I went to a van meetup, and I met two people that, well, actually I met three people that I watched on YouTube, and they were living this lifestyle, and they were people who inspired me to do the same thing. And it was Caravan Carolyn and Aja from Pandemonium and Beck's Cat Herder. And I felt like it was just meant to be, and it was like kismet. And so Carolyn and Aja asked me if I wanted to travel with them, and I was thrilled. Yeah, it was fantastic, and that's what we did. And very early on, Terry and Scott from Destination Open Road met up with us. Aja and Carolyn had known them from before. And we met Kelly Doyle and Sophie Doyle, and yeah, and we were a little traveling caravan, and it was fantastic. It was so much fun, and it really felt like a family. Look over my shoulder. The my little friend is back. Can you see him? Poor guy. He's probably hungry. So we started traveling down the coast, and yeah, so the rest is history. Like, you can go on YouTube and watch the rest of that story. I'm nervous for the coyote because he keeps going over by the road. It's not that often that I see coyotes in the daylight, so I hope he's okay. Anyway, so fast forward a bit, and I get a call from my lawyer, and he says that the insurance company wants a third opinion, and it really is more of a tiebreaker between the two opinions of the two different surgeons. And so I agree to it, and I fly back to Chicago from San Diego, and I go and see this surgeon who's supposed to be one of the best in the country for spinal surgeons, and he spends about 90 seconds with me and asks me a few questions and asks how my pain levels are, and I tell him the truth because I always do, and I say my pain is manageable right now, and I have bad days, and I have an occasional day where I can't even get out of bed, but it's rare, and most days it's just manageable. And so that was about it. I figured and then he said he wouldn't look at my MRI results because they were too old. So I figured that he would order the MRIs, the new MRIs, and that we would go from there. But then I fly back to San Diego, and I rejoin my friends, and then I get a call from my employer saying, "You're released to come back to work." And I thought they were kidding. It came out of nowhere. You know, I hadn't been to work in so long, and nothing had been rectified or really addressed, hardly. But yeah, so I didn't want to fly back to Chicago and just stay with friends, and you know, then I wouldn't have a vehicle. I got rid of my car when I bought my van. I also didn't want to give up my van life because I felt like I worked for it. You know, it was a big decision for me, and I worked hard on converting it into a camper, and I just, yeah, it's this happy part of my life now, and to abandon it, I'm just not willing to do that. And so I drive back to Chicago. I pretty much drive straight through and go straight to work the first day. Well, the day after I get back to Chicago, I go to work. And the first day at work, I'm pretty sore and tired, which is understandable. By the way, I work a very physical job. It's a heavy lifting and long hours on concrete floors. But I'm in a management position, so I have to work a certain amount of hours, and anyway, so I'm sore and I expect to be, but by the third day I can hardly stand. But I continue to push through because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I guess it's just my work ethic. But I push it way too far, and I end up working over a month, and get to a point where I am in agony pretty much constantly. And so I go back to my doctor, my original doctor, and he writes me off of work again. So now, well, in the meantime, I am in my van. I'm in Chicago. The weather is hideous. It's like the longest winter ever. At night it's getting, you know, below 20 degrees, and it's pretty much snowing or raining or ice or no sun, all dark. And it's one thing if you live in a house, but when you live in a van, it's a terrible, I don't recommend it, let's put it that way. So I look at the weather forecast for Chicago, and it's just more of the same for, you know, 2 more weeks. And then I start looking at the weather forecast for Southern Illinois, and it was like in the 60s and sunny, and it was a no-brainer. I just hopped in my van and I went south. I just need to stay close enough that I can come back for my tests and my doctor's appointments and all these things. But the insurance company is dragging their feet, and they're not approving anything, so why not? I was out of there. So I went and traveled to Southern Illinois and a little bit of Kentucky and Indiana, and the weather was fantastic. And I did a lot of filming, so I'll be showing you those videos soon. Usually when people come to Chicago or come to Illinois, they just basically visit Chicago, and people from Chicago usually don't go to Southern Illinois. It's very far from Chicagoland, and I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say I'm going on vacation to Southern Illinois from Chicago. People around here, we go to Michigan or we go to Wisconsin. So I'm excited for you guys to see those things. I do plan to join the tribe again. If all goes well, I'll get some things moving here, and I'll actually have my MRIs and maybe even have surgery, and then hopefully it'll be the laser surgery, so it'll be a very short recovery time. If it ends up being that invasive surgery, they told me it's a very long recovery, and I basically have to learn how to walk again. So let's hope it's not that. And I hope to be maybe in Colorado in the summer. I definitely don't want to be in Chicago during the summer. It's so hot. Like today it's like 78 degrees, and I mean, it's beautiful, but in my van it's already steaming hot, so I don't think a Chicago summer in my van, it's not in the cards. I hope it's not, at least. So yeah, I miss my friends. I miss the community, that family feel that we have, and yeah, hopefully they welcome me back. I get a lot of questions on how my back is doing, and I want to say thank you. I really appreciate the concern. My back is actually doing pretty well. Luckily, my back seems to really only get bad when I'm doing physical labor or standing for long periods of time, or sitting for long periods of time. When I give it some rest and I'm, baby it a bit, it's actually not bad at all. I mean, I still have pain and I still have a bad day now and then, but overall it's doing really well, and I appreciate everybody for asking. So that's why I'm back in Chicago. It was not by choice, and I don't really have much control over how long I can stay, when I can leave. Yeah, it's all kind of out of my hands right now.